So I'll start that now so I don't forget later. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to read out a little bit for really for Natasha, because everyone else is already members. Just a little bit about what the Therapist Network's about and what membership gives you, so that you can make an informed decision. I'm going to read it almost literally from a piece of paper because I tend to have memory problems. And so I find it easier to have notes. So I'm going to look at those now, which means I won't be able to see your lovely faces for the moment. So I'll just open it up. Right. So the purpose of the Therapist Network is to create a collaborative community of therapists where we find like-minded friends and colleagues. It's about building connection with others based on face-to-face relationships as well as online. And obviously at the moment, all of it's online until we're allowed to meet again. And Linda started it, Linda Bishop, because she found that working for herself was really great, but she found it lonely and isolating because she worked from home. We don't consider this to be your normal business networking. So it's not like traditional networking events where you'll go and, you know, it'll be quite formal and you share business cards and maybe not make the connections. We really want to come from a more heartfelt place and try and build real relationships. And we found that, you know, they can be in friendly and informal meetings, and we laugh and cry together and share things that are really going on in our lives and careers. So we really don't want it to be stuffy. We try to make sure that our face-to-face meetings are not overcrowded, because our feedback has been that you get better connections and you get to know people better in smaller groups. And I think that's a similar thing to what's been happening, we've found, with the breakout rooms. So we regularly have speakers. We try to make sure that we have a good mix of people sharing therapies that they do, particularly if it's an unusual therapy or one that's not so common. We also try to get as much business help and advice that we can that's relevant to therapists, but also that speak therapist language. So again, we're not looking for like 1980s shoulder padded suit types, if you know what I mean. I know that's a bit of a generalism. But just people that also are more heartfelt in their business and a bit more personable tends to work well, because a lot of I've noticed that a lot of therapists are quite creative and quite multifaceted, and so learn in a different way to perhaps the standard stern PowerPoint presentation, which is ironic because I'm going to give you a PowerPoint presentation today, sort of, but hopefully it'll be a bit different. So when you become a member, you can come to any of the meetings online or face-to-face when they're back available, and there's no extra charge. We used to charge a couple of quid for meetings, but we don't now, if you remember. Membership's £10 a month. You also get me as your personal assistant to guide you through putting your listing on our directory, which is findtherapyhere.co.uk. And we put that directory listing, once it's done, we put that on our social media for you as part of a scheduler, so they all roll out on a random basis to just try and help promote you and your therapy. You can also publish articles, blogs, advertise events, and I also help put all of those through for you. So you really don't have to do, other than telling me the information you want in it, you don't have to do all of the logging into the computer and figuring out what you've got to put in for the directory. We also have the therapistnetwork.com, which is like a little online social network for therapists only, and coaches are allowed to join as well, because there's a correlation between coaches and therapists. And you can join groups, you can send and receive private messages with other therapists, and you can get help and advice. We've got a supervision area. That's a relatively new website. It's been open nearly a year now in its current form, although we've been going for 5 years. And we're continuing to try and find ways that we can grow and support and help our members to grow their practice and to get to know other colleagues. So that's basically what we're about and how we work. Welcome, Annie. Sorry I didn't let you straight away. I was reading something off, so I apologise if you was waiting for a few moments there. So that's basically it. So Natasha, you can come to 2 meetings. Everyone else here is members at the moment, and if you like it, then feel free to join, and those are the things that you will get, and I'll help you and guide you through if that's something you're interested in. So
thank you.
So hi. What I'm going to do, because I've got my talk is probably around about the 20-minute mark when I practice it. It's 15 to 20 minutes when I practice it, and I'm the only person in the room. So one of the things that I'm going to do is I'm going to suggest that if you have any questions as we go along, that you just jot it down on a piece of paper or make a note in your mind, and we'll come to questions at the end of the presentation. Because otherwise, what I've found when I gave it as a talk in one of our face-to-face meetings is it ended up being over an hour long by answering questions as we went along, and I didn't get to finish the presentation, and I wouldn't want you to miss anything important from it. So that's what we'll do. What I'm going to do when I start the presentation is I'm going to mute everybody. And then when we do the questions and answers afterwards, then if there's still just 6 of us, then I'll unmute us because there's not a lot of background noise at the moment. But if the meeting gets busier, then I'll just unmute people as they want to talk. And then hopefully we'll get a chance to do lots of questions and answers. And if there's time, some breakout rooms too, so you can really get to know each other. Although a lot of us already do. So it'd be nice to find out some more about you, Natasha, and the things that you do and offer. So yeah, so if anyone else joins in later, they'll just have to catch up. So welcome everybody, and thank you for coming along. I think I covered everything. What I'm also going to do a little bit later on is I'm going to share some links in the chat room. So if you've never filled one out before, we will need you to fill out something called a GDPR permission sheet. I am at the moment, Annie, recording this meeting, just so that the presentation can go to our members. Sorry, you missed that bit earlier. So it's not going to go on social media or anything because your faces are going to be in it. So, but I will be putting the presentation section on the membership website so our members can see what I talked about here today. Is that all right, Annie? Because you missed the permission bit. Liz, was you there for the permission bit? Oh, you're muted.
Yes, I was here for the permission bit.
Okay, all right. So if you change your mind at any point, tough. I won't put it up if nobody wants me to, but I'll edit it so we've got this bit missing at the beginning. So yeah, so I'll share some links in the chat. One of them will be for the GDPR form. You can fill it in online, so we don't have to worry about if you're trying to photograph or scan or post anything. And I'll also put a link of where you can join us. In fact, I'm going to do that right now because then I won't forget later. That's probably the safest thing, isn't it? Do it as you remember. And then hopefully you'll see it. Okay, so that's the bit, if anybody wants to join, they go there.
So Claire, I was just thinking, if you do decide to set up the meetings for people because of the problems you mentioned earlier, if it's not too much work, you could put the GDPR in the chat, or you could, what you're doing now would be very helpful.
Yeah, it would be.
I'm making a note to do it.
Okie dokie. And I've also got our GDPR policy, which I'll put up. It's pretty wordy. It has to be for our insurance people in the ICO. But it's there, and then I've done my bit there.
It's really helpful if it's in the chat, because it's helpful in the chat because it's immediately accessible. People haven't got to look for it.
Yeah. What I also do is anybody who's not been to a meeting before, I email them afterwards with the link for the GDPR as well. So if you're worried that you've missed it or you're not sure how to save the chat, then let me know and I can send the links separately too. I'm happy to do that. Right, so it's, according to my clock, nearly 10:25, so I'll start the presentation. I haven't done this online before, so I'm hoping I don't have any technical issues. Has anybody got any questions before I start? No?
I only have one, but I think that's to do with much later on. That's how do you get pictures onto your website in Google?
Oh, okay then. I shall answer those afterwards. So I need at the moment to Mute everybody. Except for me. Wonderful. So when I bring up the screen, I'm not going to be able to see you guys. So if it looks like I'm looking somewhere else, that's because I've got a separate screen with the presentation on here. So just thought I'd let you know. And if you're on a computer, at the top right-hand side, you've got something called Speaker View or Gallery View. I currently have mine on Gallery View, but if you want to see only me when I'm talking, then you can change it to Speaker View, and whoever's talking will come up bigger on the screen. That's an option that you can use if you want to. I like Gallery View because I can see everybody equally, but that's a choice there if you're on a computer. I'm not sure how it works on a tablet. I need to investigate that. Right, so I'm just going to share my screen. Hi. Sorry, my son's just got up. Okay, so hopefully you should see a bit of a blank screen at the moment. Right, I just need to adjust something. Bear with me a moment. Okay, so today we're going to talk about a little bit about Google. I'm going to cover some things that might be a little bit jargony, but they will be unjargoned by the end. I'm also going to explain, a lot of people don't understand the very basics of how Google works and how it makes its decisions on what it shows on search results. A lot of people think that it's a very technical thing because there's a lot of fake SEO companies out there that will pretend it's really technical in order to get lots of money from you. And if you're going to do, if you want to get to the very top of Google for everything that you do, then that can be very long-winded and expensive because Google is actually quite complicated. However, by the end of today, I will be giving you a tip of one thing that you can do, which is the one most important thing that Google looks for, that actually any external company probably can't do for you anyway. And so that will help you make decisions if you ever decide to get somebody to help you with SEO, which stands for search engine optimization, which is basically getting found on Google. So Google isn't the only search engine. There are others. There's Yahoo, there's Bing, and DuckDuckGo, and some others that I've heard of. But Google currently has about 98% market share of the search engine world. So it's the one that everybody understands and talks about. But the rules are the same for other search engines because they've copied Google. So this is the one to learn, really. So Google has three primary functions as a business. One is to crawl the internet. One is to index the internet. And to rank it in order of importance. No mean feat, because it's quite a large thing, the internet. So crawling means that it's going to look all over the internet for content. So writing, images, video, all of that sort of thing, anything that's on the internet is looking for it. Then it's looking to store and organize the content that it finds, but it's very choosy about what it decides to store and organize. So a lot of people think that their website is saved on the internet by Google, and it's not necessarily. And then it will provide bits of that information that best answers the searcher's queries and in the order of the most relevant to what they've typed in the search box. So it uses a bit of programming called a computer algorithm, or it's nicknamed a bot or a spider, to look at each page and decide how it wants to index it. So it doesn't necessarily index it, it might choose not to. It looks for links on every page of your website, and it will follow them to look for other new content. So when you see this icon, it means that it's something that if you can access your website's content, it's something that you can do yourself. So can Google actually find your pages in order to crawl them in the first place? You can easily check which pages your website has been indexed with on Google And I'm going to show you how to do that, and it's something that you might want to try later. And I can share these slides with you after the talk if you want me to, in case you're worried about forgetting this. So basically you go to Google and you type in the search thing, site, and then you put your site without the www and all of that in front of it. So in this case, I've used jello.com as an example, and it will give you a list of all of the pages that it is currently indexed on jello.com, or in your case, your own website. So it's site, and then your website name. I've just heard a ding dong, so I think somebody's trying to get into the meeting. Excuse me a moment, I need to stop the presentation.
Sorry.
And find Zoom again. Oh, it's not showing me out.
It's me.
Oh, hello. Oh, sorry, I thought someone was waiting to come in. You've got in, okay.
Oh, sorry, I'm only popping in for 10 minutes just to say good morning.
Okay. Right, hold on then, I need to start again.
To interrupt you. Oh.
Oh, I can't get my screen back.
I've got it.
Okay. Ah, that's where we were. Fabulous. Yeah, so if you go site, and then your website name, it will show you the pages of your website that have been indexed by Google ever. So as you can see here, jello.com has 85 pages on Google. It's not a very big website, perhaps, or maybe not all of the pages have been indexed by Google. So it doesn't save all of your website to look at. So it means that there may be some sections of your website that people are never able to see on Google. So can Google actually crawl your content to find more content? So the spider needs links enabled for it to be able to do this on any page of your website, such as a navigation menu along the top. Most websites have one of those. Those are all links to other pages. You might have, if you write a blog or have pages, you might have suggested other content at the bottom for readers to continue reading. And you might have links within your text that link to other relevant content, and that's a really good way to get more of your website indexed on Google. So here's an example of a website, and we have links along the top. So if somebody clicks one of those, it'll take them to another page on the menu. We have links at the side there, which is suggestions for other blogs or reading that they might want. We also have an external link there that goes to Facebook. And we also have links underneath the title, which are basically for the categories or any tags that the article has had. They will link to a page with all of the other things in that category. So this is how Google interprets and stores the pages on your website. But just because it can, it doesn't mean necessarily that it will. So common mistakes that people sometimes make with websites, and sometimes poor developers do too. So the menu on the desktop might have different items compared to the menu on the mobile version. So what I have seen with some websites is that when it gets smaller for a mobile device, you'll get like a little button that you can press to bring up the menu. Sometimes when you bring up the menu, the choices there are different to if it was on the main website. And the problem with that is Google then doesn't know which one it's got to show, because you're saying this is important, it's a menu, And it's like, well, which one is important? So it's good to make sure that if your menu on your computer screen is the same options, it doesn't matter how it's laid out, but the same options as when it's on a mobile device. And most people have about me, contact, pages describing what they do, that sort of thing. That's what I'm relating to here. So they may have user-specific personalization. So some websites will have their own version of a homepage, and that's okay for things like membership websites. So I currently have that on the Therapist Network. When I log in, I get a homepage that's different to one that are not members will get. And so members get a different page when they log in that has all of the information they need. If the different page is not public, and is deliberately not being searched by Google, so I've turned that function off for me, then it's not going to affect SEO. But if that's something that you have for some reason because of a developer has suggested it, if it's public, again, Google doesn't know which one it's supposed to show. Am I supposed to show this one or that one? So it's probably not relevant to most therapists, but if you have like a community group or something like that, it may be relevant to you. These are things that are really best done for an SEO expert or a developer, or an enthusiastic amateur. And you can check for broken links on your website. So if Google tries to look down a link and it doesn't lead anywhere because the page it's going to doesn't exist anymore or doesn't work for some reason, then that's something that needs to be fixed. And that's something that a lot of people could do themselves. And I'm going to show you how you can check your own website. So if you have access to your content or you have a developer, you can get it fixed. So there's a website called Online Broken Link Checker. And basically what you do is you just type in to the bit where it says enter your URL. You type in your website address. You fill in the security code and then you click find broken links now. And I'm going to show you a little clip of me doing this as an example. It's brokenlinkcheck.com. Apologies, I read that wrong. So you just have to fill in the really annoying security code. Sometimes it can take a while, so I've edited this to speed up the process. So it's something I quite often will leave running and I'll go make a cup of tea, especially if you have a big website. So as you can see here on the example website I used, I found a broken link and it's called contact %20us. So I'm going to click link source and it'll take me to the page where that broken link was found. And I'm going to go on the hunt for it. This can be the interesting bit, is finding it. So I'm going to look everywhere because it was a contact link, and at the bottom left you can see it says contact-us, so it's not that one. We want the one with the % sign in it that's broken. So there's another contact, so maybe it's this one. Ah, the bottom left, yes, that's going to be the one. So that contact link is broken and I need to go in and fix it. That went a bit fast. Sorry if it went too fast for you. So you can also find out when Google last indexed one of your pages. So obviously Google has to trawl through billions and billions of pages on the internet. And so that can take time. It can be months and months before one of your pages gets looked at. And so it may be that you've written a blog or that you've edited some of your information and things don't seem to be happening. And sometimes it's because Google just hasn't caught up with it yet. So you can find out when it did that. So if you go to your website on the search bar and you put in site.therapist network, or your own website, I did it on the Therapist Network. On the right-hand side of the link, you can see it has a little arrow. If you click that arrow, it says cached, and it will show you the date that Google last looked at that page. It will also display for you the image of the page as it was when Google last looked at it. So if you have made changes, you can easily see if it looks different to what it does now. If you cannot see the page that you wish to see when you enter site colon your domain, then that means it's not been indexed by Google. Google's never seen it, it's probably never going to see it, and neither will anybody who searches on the internet for it, unless they know the website address to go directly to it. You will need to create something called a site index and submit it to Google via something called Search Console. So again, this might be something that's better for someone who understands SEO, a bit better to talk you through, or to get a web developer to do. You can use this file to tell Google which pages you want it to index and which ones you don't. So you don't really need all of your website to be indexed. The quicker and easier it is for Google to see the pages you want shown, the better it is for everybody. And so like a login page or your terms and conditions or your GDPR policy, you don't really need that to be shown in search results. Those are the sorts of things that customers will need to know about after they've already learned about you. But your blog and your about page and things like that, you certainly do want Google to be able to find. So if you have a WordPress website, for instance, I'm a specialist in WordPress, so I can talk about that confidently. Then there are a couple of excellent, what they call plugins, which are a bit like apps, that allow you to do this yourself, and you can do it for free, and they're dead easy. So Google has ever-changing goalposts. So the search engines like Google want to provide users with the most useful answer to their search and in the most useful formats, which means they are constantly re-evaluating how they do that and therefore changing the rules. Great news is, a lot of this you can control if you do have access to your own content. So if you're able to log into your website and change the words on it, then this is something you can have control over quite easily. So how does Google decide? It has an algorithm. As with everything on Google, it's artificial intelligence, it's done by a computer. There's not very much that's done by human beings with Google. And this algorithm is called PageRank. Now, the page bit in it often confuses people. And that's because it's nothing to do with your page itself, but actually it's named after the creator, which is Larry Page. He created this algorithm. So PageRank measures the links. It has something called Rank Brain, which is artificial intelligence. So it learns about people on the internet, how they're writing, what kind of words they're using, how their diction is. It learns about things that people are searching for and whether that's related to other things. It can learn exactly like a human would and is incredibly good artificial intelligence. So it's very clever. And it measures the content of your website. And it measures something called EAT, and I'll come to that later. So links are the content linked within your site and content that's coming in or going out to other websites. It learns how users behave on search results and it adjusts itself accordingly. So if it gives a wrong search result and a user does something called pogo sticking, which is basically they go on a web page and go, no, that's not what I was looking for, and come straight off again. It doesn't cause you any problems on your website. It realizes it's made a mistake and changes its own way of learning to correct the mistake. And it measures what people click on, where they click, how long they spend on that page. So are they actually reading something? It doesn't know what your eyes are looking at. It just measures the time that they're on the page for. It measures something called bounce rate, which is basically where somebody goes to a page on your website. They may spend a really long time there, but they don't click anything else. When they're done on that page, they don't go anywhere else on your website. That's called bounce rate. And as I mentioned, pogo sticking, which is really quick. So it's basically, they go there, go, no, that's not right, come off again. That's usually when Google realizes it's made a mistake. Everything else we're responsible for. and EAT, which stands for expertise, authority, trustworthiness. And it's only measured against something called your money or your life websites. And I will explain that more later, because that really does affect anybody who's in the health and wellness sector. So therefore, you guys. So very important, links. There is something called a backlink. Some people may have heard of that before if they've done any work on websites or worked with somebody. So basically a backlink is where website A connects to a different website, website B. They're also known as inbound links. So if you've not heard of it, backlink, you may have heard of the term inbound link. They're crucial because online they are your word of mouth. And what's important is not how many you get, but the quality of the website they're coming from. Also, internal links. So where a page on your website links to another page on your website. These are important because they allow the spiders to crawl through and therefore index the pages, which means that they then have a chance of being seen on Google. So RankBrain, it learns searchers' behavior. Every time you type something into Google, it is listening, and it will learn what you've done and how you behave when you're doing it. That can be unnerving to some people when they know about that. It understands language patterns. It can tell if somebody has got a website where they write most of the content and then somebody else has ghostwritten for them. It knows. It can tell the difference in language pattern. And it does this because it wants to provide the best possible user experience and information for the searchers who might land on your page. So this is how Google makes their money, which is why they've invested so heavily in this artificial intelligence technology. Because if they show the wrong result to people or something that's not relevant when they type something in the search bar, then they're not going to want to use Google. And this is how Google got really big, because they're very good at it. And I'm sure you know, if you was to type something that you want to find out in Google, we're pretty used to now reliably getting something back that is relevant to what we typed in. But that hasn't been an overnight thing for Google. It's something they're very good at now. If they didn't do that well, then they wouldn't make any ad revenue from it. So it's important to them to get that right. So your content, this is the number one important thing that SEO companies that want your money won't tell you about. So the content is the easiest way that you can control your own Google results. And it's all really that Google is interested in as a number one priority, because the content is what says whether they're giving relevant information to the searcher or not. So as you've learned, that's very important to them. Content is more than just words. It's images, designs, videos, etc. It's everything that a user consumes while they're on their website. So it's important to Google that your website is made for the person reading it and not for Google. And it knows the difference. But it can't read, it can't watch videos, and it can't view images. It's text-based. The focus is on user satisfaction. Therefore, and this is the thing that confuses a lot of people, there are actually no strict rules on what you put in header tags, which is basically the stuff that comes up a bit bigger. I'll explain that more at the end if you want me to. How often a keyword appears. So you may think that you want to write something on your website and you have to cram it with lots of that word that you want to get found for. So this is again a technique that SEO experts used to use in order to go really high up the ranking pages, but Google doesn't fall for it anymore. So that, say for instance you're writing a blog about boiling a kettle, if you type in the word boiling and kettle hundreds of times in the text, it used to be that Google saw that and went, oh, that's what this is about, I'm going to produce this. But then the end user wasn't spending any time reading it, because to an actual human being, just seeing the repeated words boil a kettle doesn't give them any useful information. And so Google knows that now. So there's no strict rules, but it has to just read naturally to a human being. And there's no strict rules on the content length. So it used to be popular to have posts and pages that were just about 300 words. Now the fashion is like 1,200 words. But again, there's no strict rules. It's all about what the person reading it is getting out of it that's more important. They do play a role. There are 200 checks that Google makes on every single page that helps them make their decision. So as a website, as somebody who owns a website, it's almost impossible for you to be able to get every single one of those checks right, because there's over 200 of them and they change every year. But the content has always been the #1 thing and always will be. So if what you're writing is pleasing to the person who's reading it and gives it good information, then you're already onto a winner. And all the other technical things can help. They all nudge it up. You know, it's like a cumulative effect. But the first and foremost, most important thing that I go through with people I coach is that if you're not writing to your ideal client, then they're not going to read it and Google's not going to index it. So everything else becomes moot. So what in your content does it measure? It measures clicks. So once somebody's landed on your website and had a read of it, are they clicking other parts because they're still interested and want to find out more? Did they click to get on your website in the first place from the search results? Please excuse all these graphics. I hadn't done a keynote presentation before and I was playing with all of the things I could do. It measures time spent on the page. So are they spending time reading it? It measures bounce rate and pogo sticking, which are the two things I talked about earlier. So clicks are one of the biggest factor. When you're presented with, you put a search in Google and you're presented with all of the options that you could potentially choose from, which one does the person click on? So remember, Google doesn't really care about your website, cares about its search results. So when they're presented with that list, if yours is one of them, are they going to click on it? How long they're spent on the page once they've clicked. So they might have thought it was interesting, but when they get there, do they stay there? Bounce rate. Do they only visit that one page before they leave and go somewhere else? Or do they then stay on the website and consume more information? Or do they click and then jump straight back because they've been given the wrong search result? So RankBrain also collects and uses data from different places on the website. So from map results, from ads, from the distance. So if you're a local business, then distance is a factor. From business listings on Google My Business. From shopping if you sell products. And from citations such as Wikipedia if you're famous enough. And the relevance. So the stuff that you've typed into Google, did it answer it when they presented your web page as an option? How can you tweak it in order to get more clicks? So the first thing that you can tweak is your title, which is the one that appears in blue on a Google search result. And you can tweak the snippet or metadata. You may have heard those terms and not known what they were. Google has one last trick up its sleeve, eat, which is what I mentioned earlier. And when it comes to this, it uses humans. So it has something called Your Money or Your Life websites that it looks at. So it's anything that's giving advice that may or may not affect the human that's reading it and their outcome in life. So it's either financial advice, health and well-being advice, people that make claims that will affect people's families and relationships. So that's quite a lot of stuff on the internet that does that, particularly therapists. So when this first was launched, EAT, in 2018, in July, a lot of therapy websites, including the counselling directory, which I'm sure a lot of you are familiar with, a lot of therapy websites saw a drop in their rankings on Google. They suddenly disappeared off the end of the planet. And so people that may have been getting inquiries from their website suddenly stopped. And it's because this was put in place. Now, the great thing about Google, and I say this sarcastically, is that they don't make it common knowledge when they change. Even SEO experts find it really hard to pull apart, because they're very secretive, to pull apart the changes they've made and figure out what they've got to do in order to get back onto Google again. So one of the things that they look at now, and it's their main focus when they're looking at the content on your website, is if you're giving any kind of advice of any sort whatsoever, or making any kind of claims, even if it's just gently, they will look at whether you are showing on your website to have some expertise, some authority in that subject you're talking about, and whether your website and you and your reputation appears trustworthy. So with expertise, they will compare you to your competitors and see if you know more about a subject than they do. They will look at any medical claims and see if they are backed up by scientific research. So those are good things to link to if you've noticed a scientific study that backs up anything that you offer for your clients. They will look at whether you're known, so they'll look at social media, they'll look at whether you've written any articles or published anything for universities, or for other sites such as Huffington Post or Medium, things like that. So they will just have a look and see whether you're known in your community and in your area of expertise. They will look at whether you are or whether you use world-renowned authors to back up the information that you're giving your clients and your potential website users. They will look at whether you are looking after the safety of your users. So do you have disclaimers in place? Do you make it clear it's just your opinion? That, for instance, if you're giving some medical advice, that they should check with their doctor first. All these sort of things you're probably already familiar with. They look at whether your qualifications are verifiable. So if you've put letters after your name, are they real ones, and is there evidence somewhere of that? So a lot of therapists, which is a good idea, will actually take a photograph of their certificates, put a watermark on it so it can't be copied and used by anybody else, and publish them on their website. And they will look at whether the person that's giving advice is being published anywhere else. And they quite often, for people giving advice, will trawl LinkedIn, because that's a relatively reliable sense, because that also uses humans to do checks. They will look at your authority. So if you have any websites that are linking to you, are they excellent quality websites? So if another website has recommended you, are they a good quality? So has it come from like a website that's big, that's long-standing, that's well-known, that has a good reputation? Have other experts cited you and your advice when they've been talking in their articles? Have you given your own personal experiences instead of advice? So instead of telling somebody directly what to do, have you just said, this happened to me? That's a safer approach, if it's true. Have you got any positive comments on your site? So have you opened it up for people to make a comment on anything you've written, and are they positive? Are you mentioned in any news on the websites or on the internet? Have you contacted any local news outlets and told them about what you do, and they've given you an interview? Do you have an author biography, and is it good quality? So, sometimes you see at the bottom of a website it says, this article was written by so-and-so, and there's a little picture and a little clip of like what they're qualified in and what they do, and they usually say something that they like doing with their kids as well, just make it more personable. Is there a good quality author bio, and do you share that everywhere you write stuff on the internet? They'll look at the age of your business and also the age of your website, because the ones that have been around the longest tend to have the more experience. And they will look at whether you're on Wikipedia or not, which can be notoriously difficult to get on. And again, not any one of these things is more important than the other. These are just general things that they check to see whether they would trust the advice that's being given. And they look at trustworthiness. So when the human looks at your website, because they're doing these checks because it's been flagged by Google as being possibly coming under these headings, they ask themselves the first question: would I give this person my credit card? So is the person authentic, or appears to be authentic in what they're saying? And do they come across as themselves, or are they trying to pretend to be someone else? Does the business or the business owner have a good reputation? Have they got Google reviews, and are they good ones? Notice it doesn't look at Facebook reviews. Does it have a security certificate attached to the website? So that's basically where at the beginning it says HTTP something or other. Is there an S, HTTPS? That means that if the person is going to enter any of their personal information onto your website, it will be dealt with securely. This is something that your whoever hosts your website can provide for you if you don't have it. It also shows the little green or red lock symbol on the search bar at the top where your website address appears. Does this person appear to be insured? Have they talked about their insurance and what it covers? Are they salesy? Is it an obvious funnel, or are they genuinely wanting to help others by giving good advice? Do they have a low number of funnels and instead have more quality information? So Google recognizes sales funnels and isn't terribly keen on a lot of them if you're in this kind of sector that is affected by these checks. So things that you should do first: make sure you're providing valuable content. Always think about the end user and what they're getting out of it whenever you write anything for your website. Make sure the title is pretty descriptive and is about 60 characters. That's a rough guide, but what you don't want is it to be too long when it's shown in blue on the search results. It needs to say pretty quickly what you're going to get out of the article or the page. Is it authentic? Do you cite evidence of any claims or qualifiers that you've made? The home page needs to clearly state what you do and why you do it. The home page also gives opportunities for you to explore the rest of the website. So are there links to other areas of the website on your home page that people can explore? Does every page have a call to action? So you're asking the reader to do something else. So when they've finished reading, are you saying, get in touch, or read this other article, it might be interesting? Is it useful and usable for real people, or when it's being read, does it read like it's written for Google? Does it use clear language? Is it simple and no jargon? So this is something that people quite often fall in the trap of when they become expert at what they do, is they forget what it was like to not know anything about that subject. And your users may know nothing about the subject. So somebody said to me the other day, I write my website like I'm writing it for a child. Not because they wanted to be derogatory about the reader, but just that it makes sure that the information is simple and clear. Are they focused on the user at all times? Oh, bugger. Ranking on Google is a lot of work. Don't panic. Your website, like you and your business, is a journey. It will learn, it will grow, it will develop, and it will change often over time, just like you and your business will. Just one step at a time. So a lot of people think a website is something to tick off their list of things to get for their business, but actually it's something that evolves along with you and your business. Thank you. Time for questions. I'm just going to end the sharing so that I can see you guys again. And I've lost me mousey, it's fallen asleep. If all else fails, press escape. There we go. I'm back.
Fantastic. Thank you.
Hi. Okay, I am going to unmute anybody who's muted. Hi Dee, sorry I left you waiting. I was in the middle of a presentation, wasn't able to stop it.
It's
sorry.
okay. I got myself put into something else in the meantime.
Right, so those of you who have just watched the presentation about Google, do you have any questions?
I have questions.
Okay, so I'll go Janet, then Wendy, and then Liz. Janet.
All right. How do you get pictures onto your website?
Who are you building your website with?
Sarah. Is that?
Can you log? Are you able to log in and access your own website information?
I think so. Yes.
Okay.
It's all new, as you know. It's only been up a couple of weeks.
Yeah. So to get pictures onto the website, it depends on the builder that built the website. Okay. So the answer to that is I'm afraid a bit vague, because it depends on how your website was built. So for me with WordPress, I can go directly into it and just upload a picture like you would on social media. Okay. But for you, it may be different. Mm-hmm. So you need to speak to Sarah about that.
Okay. And also, in the past, one of my friends, she put a workshop onto Google and they threw her off. Is that likely to happen to me if I put on a workshop for reflexology or anything like that, if anybody's interested?
It rather depends on the reasons for why she was thrown off. It's quite unusual to be thrown off of Google.
Exactly. It was just to talk about I think it was a circle, because that's what she does, and it's all on her webpage what she does. And she's done it before and it's never been thrown off, but this time it was thrown off.
Do you know if this was off of her Google business listing or her website?
Google listening.
Okay, so she probably violated one of their terms, or somebody reported her for something, whether rightly or wrongly.
Okay.
So it's like when people get banned from posting on Facebook. No one really understands exactly the reasons why necessarily, but the chances are that either one of the things that I've talked about in the presentation was severely violated, or somebody might have, posted something derogatory about her or reported her for some reason. And it could just be that she got trolled.
Okay, thank you. That's it.
Wendy.
Well, actually, Janet's questions have made me question even more. So also with the images, and I've just been playing around on a Wix site builder, and actually even trying to upload a picture on the Therapist Network page. So I often come up with issues with the resolution and the size and all that. So so that's a question. I don't even understand what the terminology is, but it just says, oh, can't deal with this. Mm-hmm. So that's a question. And also, I've been, I don't know what the term is, but when somebody's reported me because they were just in competition with me. And so the next second I was sort of thrown off, and you're thinking, well, I haven't done anything wrong. How do you get back on then what is the process for that?
So with Google used to be very closed off, and they never used to give you a good, clear way of speaking to another human being if you had a specific issue. But they are now a little bit more open, and I have actually managed to speak to people at Google before. So what you have to do is you have to go, literally you do a Google search to search the problem that you've got, and anything that ends in google.com in the URLs of the answers is the good place to go and look. You usually will be advised to read some sort of forum where it may have been answered online, what you need to do to fix it. If you then get nowhere, at the bottom, you can contact Google. Google, unfortunately, is very tech heavy behind the scenes and are not terribly intuitive. The irony is that when there's an issue, they are not good for the end user, yet they ask everybody else to be. It's a bit like a mother that goes, do as I say and not as I do. I haven't got a specific link that I can give you because they'll have a different department depending on the problem. And because Google also owns YouTube, which is the second largest search engine in the world, it also depends on whether it's Gmail, what the product is that the problem was with. So if it's, say, for instance, it's your business listing and you have a listing on Google My Business, then there would be a contact link for you to get in touch if you have a problem there. It's usually in the menu on the left-hand side on that particular product. But because Google does lots and lots of different products, they have a different process for each one, almost like a separate business. So if you need any specific help with a particular problem you've got, you can message me separately and I can try and find the right link for you if you want.
Excellent, thank you.
Back to images, of course, because you asked about images as well. Yeah, image size is really important, not for Google, it doesn't really care, but your whoever hosts your website will, because the bigger the image size, the more space and memory it takes up on the computer that's hosting your site. So there's usually restrictions in place so that it doesn't overwhelm and then slow down or even stop your website from working. Each website host will have its own idea of the restrictions, but generally speaking, if image size is usually measured in pixels and the file size, so how much memory it uses. So big images will naturally use up more memory. So the best thing to do is whatever you're taking pictures with that's going to then end up on your website, that you start with something that's no more than about 1,900 pixels on its widest size. So if it's that way up, it would be the height, and if it's that way, it would be the length. But 1,900 pixels is usually pretty good if you've got somebody that's going to go full screen on an image. When I do blogs, I usually use one that's about 640 because they're better if someone views it on a mobile, and people quite often read articles on mobile phones when they're sitting around eating dinner or something. Again, there's no hard and fast strict rules, but those are my own personal rules that I follow, and I haven't had any problems. If you've got a picture that's already too big and you want to use it, then you'll need to use some software to resize it. Most computers have that software on them. I use Photoshop because I'm a photographer, but whatever you've got on your computer should be sufficient. But the best thing to do is to just take the photo smaller in the first place. All cameras tend to be set at their highest resolution and their biggest picture, because that gives you like a higher quality image, which is great if you want to get printed, but actually for use on the internet, it's not that important.
Yeah, I'm discovering this.
Yes, yeah. So usually if you're doing it on your phone, just especially if it's an iPhone, they tend to be very high resolution, big images. Just change the settings on your phone to take a smaller image. It will use up less memory on your phone as well, so you won't run out of memory as quick.
Excellent. And just one last question, if I may. The SSL that you mentioned, I would have thought that would almost be compulsory if you have kind of like, sign in here, give me your email address and all of that, because that's sensitive data. Mm. So how do you get that?
So you need to contact whoever's hosting your website and tell them you need an SSL certificate. They're usually about anywhere from £45 to £80 a year, depending on who's hosting and what kind of certificate you get. but I've got the cheapest, most basic one for mine, and it's perfectly adequate. If you're asking people to sign in if people are buying things directly on your website, then you will need a better certificate that covers that, and your host can advise you. But what I do is I get an external thing to do when I ask people to pay, it's externally. So they'll click on my website and it'll take them to either Stripe or PayPal, which I pay them to process my payments for me. They have all the really high, big security certificates, so I can still have for my readers and commenters just the basic one. So it saves me a bit of money. I have to pay each transaction a percentage for them to process the payment, but it's better than me having to sit and figure out how to do it all myself.
Is that more just for payments you would need that, or is that like linked to GDPR?
It's both. So if you're getting somebody, if anybody types anything into your website, so if, say for instance, you write a blog and they comment underneath, they have given then your website their email address and their name, which is an identifiable piece of data. So it is covered by GDPR and therefore will need to be protected by an SSL certificate. So what will happen is if you don't have one and they put in their information, they will be given a warning saying this site is not secure, that you might be getting seen by hackers. They'll assume that it's you that's the hacker and go, oh God, I can't use this person's website, it's not real. So from a SEO point of view, and from a, protecting yourself from people getting the wrong idea of what security means on a website, because a lot of people don't understand, I would just advise you get at least a basic certificate anyway. It's annoying because it's another outlay that people have got to make, but Google do start taking notice of this now, and most browsers will warn them if it appears to be an unsecure website. And all it means by unsecure isn't that you're actually hacking or that it's been hacked. It is literally that it doesn't have that certificate. That's all they're looking at. And you may have been to a website that says, oh, this might be dangerous, and you go, oh, click back quick. It's probably not. It might be, and that's why they're erring on the side of caution, because it doesn't have the certificate to prove it's safe.
Okay, brilliant, brilliant. Thank you.
Anyone else? Liz?
So just going back to something you said there, I didn't quite hear you. Did you say change the settings on your iPhone and take photos no more than 1,000 pixels? Was that the number?
1,950 is what I generally don't go any bigger than.
Okay.
Again, it's not a hard and fast rule, but if somebody's looking at a picture full screen on a website on a computer, then that's really the biggest resolution that you would need. Most people look on laptops or phones and tablets, so you could probably get away with even less. But if they then looked at it big, it might pixelate and look a bit fuzzy and weird. So if it's a logo or a header image or something like that, I'll use I've got two sizes I keep in my head, 1900 and 650. So for blogs and things like that, I use the 650. And for anything that's going to be, potentially bigger on my website, then I use the bigger picture. But I just use those two sizes. It's just my own personal rules I've made.
Okay, thank you.
Facebook uses the same rules, so I copied them basically.
Okie doke. So the first question that came to my mind was, in terms of this linking, do you use hashtags on websites?
I don't on my own website. They're good for social media websites where there's lots of people that are wanting to jump on the same bandwagon and the same cause. So they are great for social media. I know that Facebook, Twitter and Instagram will use them, but I don't use them on my own personal website.
Okay. So the other question I had is, when you said the word Google site Jello and that, I did that and there's no matches for me.
So your site hasn't been indexed. I don't think that's true because I've looked at your site myself.
Okay, so I couldn't find it. So again, what we do is everything you've just said here, improve the content and all of everything you've said, start putting that.
So it might be how you typed it in. So did it have www or HTTPS or anything at the beginning? Did you copy and paste the link?
No, I didn't. I'll do it again in a bit, but I just wanted to feed that back to you.
If it doesn't come up without the www, try it with, because sometimes if you've got a website that's been around a while, it may have had it with the www instead. So just try both versions if one doesn't work. One of the ways that Google knows to index a page is also whether anybody's viewed it. So the chances are, Liz, that some of your pages at least will have been indexed, and it may just be that it's typed in a bit weird. Don't put a space after the colon either. It's all squished together.
No spaces. My other question, as you just talk there, is some of us are rebranding. So I'm going to look at changing the domain name from the Canterbury Coaching Centre to Elizabeth Hartley Coaching, so it can be a broader audience. Will that look like a brand new website starting if the domain name changes?
If your files and your database, so basically the content of your website stays the same, Google will at first, you'll see, if you are looking at your search results or you're doing analytics or anything, yes, you will see a drop, but it won't be permanent. So Google's turnaround time is usually about 3 months. So you'll find that about 3 months after you've rebranded, it'll start to creep back up again and the metrics will start going back up if you're looking at them. So at first you might have a drop. It won't know because it's got to learn. It's a learning program. But what I would recommend is that your old domain, so the Canterbury Coaching Centre, have something called a redirect, where that will send them to Elizabeth Hartley Coaching if they click on it, so that none of those links that you've had in the past become broken. It will still lead to your website.
Okay, so it'll be the same website. It'll just be a domain change name if I can do it. Thank you.
That's right.
And then you were talking about matching your menu the same on a desktop or a mobile. And when you said menu, you meant navigation bar, yeah?
Yeah.
Okay. And it's as simple as that. Just make sure they're matched.
Yeah, so not in style. So if it changes from a list of words along the top with options to a little box where you click it and the options drop down, that's fine, so long as the pages that they refer to are the same. So if you've got about me, contact, blog, then on the mobile it should also have about me, contact, blog.
Okay. Yeah, I think it all does.
Yeah, most of them do, but it was a practice that they used years ago to try and sneak up the rankings, and some web developers haven't learnt not to.
So what you were saying there is the number one thing with all of this, and that it is a journey, the website changes just one step at a time, but the number one thing is the content, and you've given us loads of tips for that, right to the end user really. What else did I want to ask? Yeah, that could be. Oh yeah, I wanted to ask you how important Google My Business is.
It doesn't affect your rankings, other than if people start looking at it on the website search results. So it's always advised that if Google comes up with an option for you to be found another way on the internet, that you do it if you can, but it needs to be relevant. So Google My Business is local listings. So if you are, for instance, like me, a mainly online business that can talk to anybody around the world, the local listing is less significant for me. But if you are, say, for instance, if you was looking on Google for an MOT test centre for your car, you'd probably want to find one that's in the town you live in. So therefore, for that business, the relevant being on Google My Business and having a local search result is good. Now, Google used to have, or they tried to unsuccessfully have, a social media presence. They wanted to be the next Facebook, and they failed spectacularly with Google Plus. Does anybody remember Google Plus? No, exactly. So what they do now is they've kind of merged the two. So what Google does allow you to do on your Google My Business listing is post. You can do posts like you can on Facebook, like you can on LinkedIn. So those will help you get extra traction if they link to your website in the post.
Okay.
So it's one of the 200 things that Google looks at. And this is the difficulty with trying to find quick fixes for SEO, is there aren't any, because you can do all of these things, and if you've got crap content that nobody wants to read, you're still not going to rank, even if you do all the other technical things in the background. Google reviews certainly do help a fair bit at the moment, because Google can verify them themselves, so they know if it's genuine or not.
Thank you. And you also said that YouTube was the second highest ranking search engine, I think. Yep. So therefore, it sounds like it would really help to have a YouTube video on your website.
It does help. It helps to have YouTube presence. The only thing I would say is that remember that Google can only read it can't watch. So make sure if you do a YouTube video that you have a description, and the description links to your website, because the two talk to each other because they're the same company. So that's the important thing, is if you upload a photograph, make sure it has a description in the title. And if you're able to do something called an alt tag, A-L-T tag, that also describes the picture. It's about common sense. So if you uploaded an image or a video and the only information Google could find was it was called DSC.001, how is it going to know that that's Liz Hartley? So it's all about thinking whenever you upload something, have I titled it? Is it relevant? Does it match? If it does, then that all helps Google, because it can only read writing.
So in other words, as you're talking on a video, do you have the subtext going across it as well?
So the subtext, if it's done auto-generated, won't affect any Google rankings. But if you have done your own, so if you've written up the thing that you've written about and you've posted that, then yes, it can read that.
Ooh, there's a lot to learn, isn't there?
There is a lot to learn, and it can get very overwhelming very quickly. And that's why I keep saying the important thing is, and the only thing you need to really worry about if you're not hiring someone to do your SEO for you, you're already a very busy person. Having to worry about doing all of these things for your website can only make it worse. It can become more expensive. It can make you overwhelmed, and you think, God, I'm never going to be able to do my business because now I've got to do all this work on my website. And that doesn't need to be the case. You just need to make sure that you're building your own website presence and not somebody else's. So make sure that when you're writing something that's going to go on your website, that you're thinking of the end user. Start to take notice of how you use Google. Watch yourself almost vicariously, like your out-of-body experience, and think, how do I navigate? Have you ever been lost in a blog or something and you've ended up reading 20 articles and you've gone, where did I even start with this? What was the first thing I clicked on? You probably won't remember. But it's just about behavior. Google is all about behavior. And when you put something into Google, you're searching because you want to find something out. Nobody does that for any other reason. You may have a question you want answered. You may be looking to buy something. You may be trying to find somebody. These are all queries. It only answers queries. So what query are you answering on your website for potential clients? And this is where knowing who your ideal client comes in handy, because you can write to them. So many websites I see, they only have, this is me and this is what I do. They don't also have, this is what you get. And people are on your website because they're in it for themselves. They're not really, it sounds awful, they're not really interested in you insofar as that's not the first thing they're looking for. So once you've said, this is what you get, then they'll go, okay, well, I want to find out a bit more about you now. But the first thing they're looking for is an answer to their query.
I've recently been updating my website because I've had my website for, gosh, probably about 7 years. And a bit like what you said about being a journey, it has really been a journey because I've changed in that time. And now within my changes, feeling into what I want to kind of, like the message that I want to give to people. And also that's affected being my own journey with like self-confidence and what I want to put out there, and yeah, really believing in, you know, what I do. I think that's really changed within the message that I want to give with my website. So I've recently just taken off all of my beauty treatments, which was very much about where I'd get quite a lot of work in the past, but I want to kind of change my whole image around more the holistic and the yoga and doing my shamanic dance. So I need to get new pictures, but I'm trying to update my wording, and got my website guy to do a few bits for me. But yeah, it's you know, where you said about the title snippet, the metadata, I don't think I've ever used that or put anything in there. So is because I wasn't quite sure what to do. So is that really about a bit like your keywords, like it, because it's not seen by the public, is it? It's more like back end. So you're describing what what that page is about. To say if I did one page about yoga, would I just put in that snippet yoga sessions, one-to-one yoga? Would I repeat the word in the snippet meta? Would I just...
Yeah, so if you're writing because you have a key word in mind, then yes, it should appear in your title and in your metadata. But again, it needs to read to a human in a sensible way.
Right.
That's again Google's end goal is the result, and it is seen publicly, because if Google just chooses to display it, then it can be seen. So what will happen is, and you'll find on most people that don't do it, is Google will display a snippet regardless of whether you've written one or not. But it will decide what, and it's usually sort of like the first, I think it's 100, it's almost the size of a tweet, so I think it's 178 characters roughly. It's different number of characters on desktop to what it is on mobile, so it's a rough idea. But if you can succinctly put it in what you would in a tweet, it's about the same number of characters roughly, then to get the message across. One thing I had, I did an experiment with one of my clients, and I said to them at the bottom of all of your snippets, because they wanted to receive more phone calls with inquiries, I said, put your phone number in. Why not have your contact there and then? That can be helpful or harmful depending on your business. This is all very, your SEO and your website is very tailored to your business. So for some people, it may be that they just pick up the phone and never click on the website, and therefore Google will never show that in the search result again. So it's about having that balance of the idea of that is that it's your opportunity to promote that page and get them to click it. But if when they click it, they don't find what they're looking for, that's going to harm you as well. So really, it just comes back to the content first.
Okay, thank you.
That's all right.
And also, at the moment, I'm not fixed from one location because I actually work full-time somewhere. So really, having this time in lockdown has been great for me to be able to do a bit more of my own stuff and get, so yeah, I don't have a location Google map as such of where I'm working from, but I mean, I suppose that will change in the future. Is there another way of, because I work from East Kent, but it's quite general.
There is actually. Now, Google wasn't very friendly when they first did Google My Business. You literally had to have a location that customers would visit, and that was the only way that they would allow you. Now, when you register for a Google My Business listing, they do ask you for a physical location because you need to verify that your business is there. But they do give you the option of saying that you are not a business that will have customers visit you. There's a thing you can tick that says customers don't visit me here. And you can also choose to not have your full address shown. So if you edit your address to just say Kent or something, they never used to allow that, but once you're verified, they will allow it.
Okay, brilliant, thank you. And then the other question was, I've said it to my web guy so many times about Google Analytics, and then he speaks a different language to me. So often he will tell me stuff and it just goes one way.
Yeah, it's very jargony.
For years, I've been thinking, right, yeah, can you send me that link on Google Analytics again and explain it? And so the last time we did a few updates for me, he just emailed me with a link, Google Analytics explained, and I still haven't looked at it. So I suppose it is just about sitting down and, because to be honest, I'm a bit like Wendy. I want to be the hands-on and do the practical, but when it comes to web stuff, I do find it really boring. So thank you for making it interesting.
You're welcome.
Yeah, but what exactly is Google Analytics? So is it a way of, because I suppose for me it'd be quite interesting to see how many people have actually viewed my website, because I don't think it is, when I Google myself, it usually comes up, but I think I've got quite a lot of work to do as far as, you know, putting my website in different, I don't know, like updating, you know, different, what do you call it, like Yale.com and all the ones where you can get your site listed.
Talk me through when you said when you Google yourself, do you just open Google and then search yourself?
Yeah, well, I just put my website address in. But I've heard as well, when I used to work in Brighton, that the guy said that when you do it from your own computer, it often does come up easier on yours because it's got the memory of putting your website.
Yeah, so your browser, the thing that displays the internet on your computer, I use Google Chrome. There's also Microsoft Edge. There's what's the other one? Firefox. There's a few different browsers. A lot of people use Google Chrome. All of them use something called cookies, which I'm sure you've all heard of. So a little bit of software that remembers pages that you've been to before. And so the browser itself, not the Google search engine, will work with Google to show things that you've looked at in the past as potential. You might like to look at this again. So if you're working on your own website from your own browser on your own computer, if you then search yourself, you will rank higher than you really do because it will suggest you because you've looked at you before. So it's important if you use on Google Chrome, if you use Chrome as a browser, you can open something called an incognito window. And I don't remember offhand exactly how you do that, but I can find out for you in a minute. You can open an incognito window, and then any search you do in that will be as if you've never been there before. So you'll get a truer result of what people see. However, if you only put your website address in, you will get your website come up, and you will think you're ranking higher than you are. You need to think about what are people searching for, where your website might be the answer. So for instance, I would put coaching of, well, for Liz, it would be coaching in Canterbury. If I put coaching in Canterbury in, I've already done it. Liz's does come up. So, you know, those are the sorts of things you need to start getting in the head of the people that are typing in. What kind of problems do you solve for them? What kind of questions would you answer for them? If you keep getting the same questions when people do finally contact you, is there something you could write that answers those questions where they'll go, yes, this person knows what I'm talking about, I'm going to read more.
Okay. So is that what Google, when you say about Google Analytics, is that a way of?
Yeah, so Google Analytics is basically a visual representation of how people use your website. So it will tell you whether they're typing in and being found what's called organically. So yours was a list of options and they clicked you. Whether it came from social media, so you put something from your website on Facebook and they clicked it and got to you from there. It will show you whether they're male or female. It can show you where in the world or where in the country they are from, whether they're using a mobile device to view your website or whether they're using a desktop. There's a ton of information. What it doesn't show you in analytics is what keywords people have searched for, where your website has been an option to choose from. But there is something called Search Console by Google, which does show you that. And it also shows you if there's broken links or any errors on your website that are technical. So I would recommend, if you're going to start looking at those things, one, get a bit of training in it because they can be a bit jargony. And two, use both. I use both concurrently. I look at my analytics about once a month just to see where people are finding me and whether I need to fine tune any of my pages, whether all my pages are being seen. I don't have a particularly large website because a lot of my business is word of mouth, so it's not my main focus for my business. And again, it's personal to your own business. But I also use Search Console because that helps me inform me what blog to write next, because it tells me what people are searching for, where I've been an option as an answer. Whether they've clicked on it or not, it tells me that. If I've been an option, they've not clicked on me, then I need to look at why and perhaps tweak that page or write a blog or an article about that in a different way. So it's good for finding information. It's also very good for getting overwhelmed. So if you choose to do it, tread carefully. If at any point you start going, this is too much, I can't handle it, please don't worry. Just come back to your content and who might be reading it. So long as you're serving your clients through your website, much as you would serve them face to face, or you would serve them when they come and see you, then you can't go far wrong, because at the end of the day, who matters is who's reading it. And that's all Google gives a shit about, really, excuse my French, because that's how they get paid.
So Claire, in case I've just missed it all in all the information, is how can we measure now where we rank? You know, this is the Jello thing, I think. How do we measure now? And then we go off and do our content change and measure the shifts. You're saying it takes about 3 months to see it, yeah?
It depends. This is again where it gets really difficult. There isn't a hard and fast answer. So when I give somebody I can audit websites and give them a plan for their SEO. And basically the SEO plan is usually 3 to 5 years. So yeah, it's like growing a business. It's a longer term thing. It's a slow process. When I work with somebody and I do their SEO alongside them, because I never do someone's SEO for them, because I'm not you, I'm not your business, and I can't write your content. You know that better than anybody else. So I usually work alongside somebody if they ask me to help with the SEO, and the plan is 3 to 5 years, but you can start to see notifiable changes within 3 to 6 months. And the way I measure that is when we start looking at it, I will take some measurements from Google Analytics and Search Console, and then I will compare them in 3 months' time. I never do less than a quarter. I will compare them in 3 months' time, and I will compare them in another 3 months' time. So something went crazy on the Therapist Network recently. We had been sort of doing what I expected, which is trundling along and growing a little bit and growing a little bit, and all good businesses do grow slowly. That's why when I do my workshop, it's called From Acorns to Oak Trees. It's a slow, big, strong process, but you can start seeing results on certain things, and it depends on the type of business you're in and how good you are at conveying to potential clients the things that you can offer them, what they get. And then all of a sudden, when I logged into Google Analytics for Therapist Network about a month and a half ago, and I was expecting to see a drop because of lockdown, because of all of the, you know, a lot of people had changed, aren't looking at things in the same way, and it had gone boom, it just went bonkers. I was suddenly really getting lots of ranks, it was ranking higher, getting lots of looks, all because I wrote an article about how therapists can use Zoom in their business. And people started asking questions in the comments. As soon as Google sees that there's a bit of activity on a page and people are interested and they're getting answers, so you have to reply and respond, then it starts to go, this is a website worth looking at, and it started showing other pages. So it's like a thing that grows. The golden nugget is finding that one thing that people are interested in when they potentially are looking on the internet for something.
Just to check your figures again, with the content length, you said no strict rules. It was 300 words, but the current fashion is how many words? It's
about 1,200 at the moment. It's something called long form article writing. My advice was always in the past not to be too wordy, and if you're talking technical, then definitely don't, because we don't want jargon, and that's different. But actually what people tend to do now is absorb longer articles. They'll scroll, but people tend to skim read at first.
Yeah.
So you have to have good headings and subheadings, and so there's a really good website called copyblogger.com, which has some free courses on how to write copy for the internet. And I learned a bit about headings and subheadings from doing one of those, and they've got a good blog. And it's not just about writing, it's about formatting it so it's easier to read. And again, the best way to know how to do that is to really know your ideal client and who you're talking to, and how you're going to help them. Because again, they're just what's in it for me, isn't it, at the end of the day?
Yeah. You know the keywords, is it best to use more of the same keywords or have a wide range of keywords?
It's a good idea to have anything that reads well to a human. So Google knows that, say for instance, you put therapy, therapies, therapist, it knows that all relates to roughly the same thing. So don't worry about if you use different punctuation or different versions in grammar, it will know it's relating to the same thing. It reads almost exactly like a human would. But if you are doing other things that are relevant, so don't use anything that's irrelevant to the conversation that you're having in your writing, then that's good too, because if Google's ever not sure, if you've got other stuff that backs that writing up that you're referring to that's on the same subject, then that's only going to help. There are, for me, when I use WordPress, there's a plugin that can give me an idea of whether I've written it well for Google or not. And I sometimes ignore some of the advice on that because it's very specific. It will only look for that exact version of the keyword. And I know that Google looks at more, but they don't have the software to do that. Only Google does. It's this rank brain algorithm. And obviously other softwares don't have that. So try not to worry too much. It's really easy to overthink it. But at the end of the day, if you're writing interesting content for potential readers, that's answering their questions, solving their problems, then that's going to always help. There's a well-known phrase in marketing called content is king. Don't know if anyone's heard that. But yeah, that's where that comes from. It all comes back to, are you thinking about who's reading it when you're writing?
I was going to mention, as you're saying that, on the a group that I belong to, which is Pop-Up Business, one of the things they taught us is like, it doesn't really matter, just get a landing page, get a contact page, and get a book me and a pay me page on the same on one page. And so most people only know me on social media, particularly Facebook, so you drive them to that space, right? Well, book me, pay me, yeah. And they did like a whole experiment within the week. So we started off on the Monday. Everybody created a page, just a quick page, and nothing fancy. And by the end of the week, how many clients did we actually get? And the results were really quite interesting. So I think simple is also quite important.
Yeah, definitely. And this is another thing that I said, try not to panic too much. This is really about if you want people to find you on Google but actually that's different. That's not the same as getting clients. So some businesses are online only, like online stores. So if Amazon had poor SEO, they would really fail as a business. But for therapists, a lot of it is about when you talk to people as well. So when somebody comes to me and asks if I can help them with their website or to build a website, the first thing I ask is why. And they're usually a bit taken aback by that, but it's really like, what is it that your website isn't it? It's like having an employee. So what is it you want it to do? And are you going to sack it if it doesn't? Because at the end of the day, we're busy people. I know people who have built businesses without a website, and years ago, that's all we had. So it needs to be really, if you're going to use it, a part of your broader marketing plan or your plan on how you get clients in, and not the only thing you focus on, unless you've got an online only business, which I know you don't. So it's really about thinking broadly and taking a step back from being so involved. I go on my website about once a week and make a few tweaks, and I might write a blog. I have been given lots of advice that I should be blogging every week on the same day every week, but it's just not in my nature. And I actually don't need to at the moment because I am getting clients. So I just keep it running along at the moment, and I just go in and keep it up to date so I don't completely get forgotten by Google. But I'm not putting a lot of effort into my website right now. If my client base suddenly dropped off and I needed to get more on the internet, then I would up my game on that. It's all about balance and what you need at the moment. And when I end up coaching people, quite often I find that they've been told they get in a website because they've been told they should. And it might not necessarily be right for them at that stage in their business journey. At the end of the day, you probably will get in a website, but it's on sort of like the standard checklist of things you must have for a business. And I don't believe that to be true. So like you said, just having a simple page where people can come and just book you, that's absolutely fine if that's what's right for your business. If you get your clients in a different way and you just need the function of your website to be that's how they pay, or it's like an extended version of your business card where they just get a bit more information after they've already spoken to you in person, then that's also absolutely fine. You don't need to worry about SEO because that's not what you're using your website for. But if you want your website to be attracted on Google and to go up the rankings, really the only reason people do that is because they want their website to sell for them. That's when you need to start paying attention to what you're putting on there. So, this is why people get quite it's why I think a lot of people give up on their businesses, because they get this with marketing, they get it with finances, they get it with websites. It suddenly becomes a really big lot of work, and they miss the core bit, which is just, can I get a client tomorrow? Can I talk to one person who might already be in my contacts list without a website, without Facebook, and get to know them a bit better and maybe offer them something they'd like?
I've actually got somebody who lives fairly near. She had a look at my website and she said, I'm definitely coming to you for a massage. So I was really pleased about that. So
good.
And I've sold a couple of products all from my website, but it's there, and we'll see how it goes. So I should be putting different blogs. It's part of me. It's part of a tool.
Yes.
To share, and also because I do angel card readings too, I can do it on anywhere. So I need to have that so people from all over the world can find me.
Yeah, so, and all of a sudden with lockdown, websites and computers have become intrinsically more important than they ever were before. And I'm getting certainly a lot more inquiries from people who need technical support. And so, you know, and websites and SEO will be something that maybe people will start looking at more. But the thing is just to always take a step back and keep in mind, is this really what my business needs as a part of the bigger overall plan that you've got? Because there isn't a quick fix, and there isn't a golden nugget with it. No, with anything. It's a slower plodding along. And what I think every day is, what am I going to do today that's going to get me some money tomorrow, because I've got bills to pay and a child to feed. And if tweaking a blog on a website or making my logo look pretty isn't one of those options, then that goes lower down in my priority list. But if I could phone up somebody who maybe inquired with me before and say, hey, I haven't forgotten about you, how are things? And just help them, even if it's, I don't try and help people with an expectation of them paying me. If they want to become my client later because they like what I do, then great. But I hate like snake oil type of selling and salesy funnels, and I would never use a funnel. In fact, I found a new thing called a flywheel, which makes it I'm happy with that because it's circular and round and nice. And I will write a blog about that. I'm researching at the moment that because I'm very aware, and a lot of people are now, when they're being put in a salesy funnel, and it's uncomfortable, and I don't want any of my clients ever to feel uncomfortable if they look at my website or anything I advertise. And I've done it in the past, because we all make mistakes, right? You know, I've experimented, and I do tend to use my website for experimental purposes too. But that's because I find this sort of thing really fun, and I'm very aware that I'm unusual in that sense.
Very. Very unusual.
So I've got time for maybe one more question if there is one, because I don't think we're going to have time for breakout rooms today. It's nearly 12 o'clock, I just realised. Is there anybody who got any more questions? Okay, good. If you think of anything after the meeting ends and you go, oh, crap, I should have asked that, please take down my email address and I will answer any questions you have later. And so it's Claire with an I and an E, CLAIRE at spinmyplates.com. You know, like that, spinning your plate. Spinmyplates.com. Yeah, so if you think of anything later and you go, oh, I probably could have done with that information, then just let me know. And is there anybody here that would like me to send them the slides? I've got a PDF of the slides.
Please.
Now, does anybody want to be all technical and try and download it if I upload it to Zoom now? Or would you rather I emailed it to you?
I'd love to give it a go, but
I'd like to give it a go. Can you email it as well?
Right, let me see if I can remember.
When you download it from the chat, you just download it onto your desktop bit there, don't you?
Yeah, so for me on a computer, I don't know if it will work for Wendy on a tablet, but for me on the computer, when I open chat, next to it says file, and next to that it's got 3 little dots in a square, and when I click on those 3 little dots, it gives me the option to save chat, and then everything in the chat will be saved on my computer in something called a text file, and it usually goes to downloads or documents. So I'm going to try and find now, this is new for me, the file, and I will share it on here, and we'll see if you can get it. And if not, I will also email it to anyone that wants it. So
and it gets saved under the name Zoom, doesn't it?
Yeah.
I think so.
Well, mine is, yeah.
Is that different to the video you're recording then?
Yes.
Yeah. So when you record, do you just download that and it will come up as an MP, like a video?
What will happen is when I close this meeting, Zoom will start to process the recording, and it will record the audio as an MP3 and the video as an MP4 and present me with both. So you can use it like a podcast as well. And I have selected on my settings in Zoom to save it to my computer. So that's called the local file or the local computer. But you can also get Zoom to save it on Zoom's server in the cloud. I would say that that's pretty secure as well. So I don't have any worries about doing that. I just like having it on my computer because I know where I can upload it for my editing and that. But if you want, you can get Zoom to save you some memory space. And they, I think, delete it after, don't quote me on this, but I think it might be 4 months, but it's worth checking the settings. So they do automatically delete recordings after a while. So if you do want to keep it, then you do need to download it. So I do always want to keep it, so I just get it put straight on my computer anyway. However, obviously, if you do record any meetings that you have, you need to get permission from the people involved. I know this goes without saying, but I've got to say it because I'm giving advice, and follow the GDPR regulations and all of that jazz.
Yes, can you send me the slides too, please?
Yes, so I've just put the PDF in the chat. So if anyone wants to go to the chat and click it and see if it downloads to their computer, feel free. And if it doesn't work, just put your email address in the chat and I will email it to you.
Not appeared in the chat just yet.
No, it hasn't. I've not got it yet.
Oh, it only went to Natasha. Natasha, you're a lucky lady. Right, let me try again.
Desktop.
All right, take a minute to upload, I'm just watching the little blue line go across while it's doing it. Okay, so maybe it's done now.
Download. Yeah, now what do we do?
Click it.
Oh, click download.
I've not done this before, so I'm not sure.
So we just click on it. You can see it's starting to download.
Yeah, depending on your internet connection, it might take a little while. It's not a huge file, but it's got a lot of information.
On the 3 dots first, Claire?
Huh?
Do we not click on the 3 dots first?
I didn't
no,
have
it should
to.
be just in the chat.
Download on it, and I just download it, and I can choose where I put it. There's a blue writing underneath mini workshop, and it just says download. So I've just downloaded it to Therapist Network file on my.
On mine, there's 3 little dots to the right of the file.
I didn't.
If you click that, it says show in folder, and it'll tell you where it is on your computer.
Yeah, it said I haven't had permission. I need to put it into Janet's folder, so I've just clicked it to save it.
So
I didn't even have to go onto the 3 little dots for that.
No, you shouldn't have to. But if it downloaded and you don't know where it went, it will show you where it went. So if you want me to email it to you, just pop your email address into the chat now, and I will do that.
Yes, please.
Wendy, are you able to access the chat on your tablet?
I can see that, yes.
Okay.
So I'll stick my email address in there for you.
Yeah, it's just as an aid memoir for me really to remember to send it and who to. But if you can't do that, let me know and I'll get your email address written down separate.
Yeah, I'm doing it now. There you go. I'm in.
So while you're doing that, Dee, I just wanted to say welcome to the meeting. Sorry we didn't see you at the beginning. If you have any questions
sorry, I
or
didn't ask
anything.
any questions.
Sorry?
Ooh, hang on. So I've got, my internet connection is unstable. What a change. What a surprise. yeah, I sorry, I was late in there. I don't know. I thought I'd gotten earlier, but yeah, if I think of anything, I'm a pretty much of a newbie back in therapy. I've been out of this work for 10 years and decided in January to come back into it. So just got my website up and we closed down. So
time.
So yeah, so it's been really useful. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Yeah, I hope everybody got something out of that, and it'd be nice to see anybody at any other meetings. We have meetings every week at the moment, apart from the 5th week of a month. So they usually go like first week, second week, third week, fourth week, and at the very top of the chat, I did put some links. But if you go to the website therapists-network.com, there is also a link there with all of our meeting dates. So if you want to come along to anything else, if you're not a member, you can come to 2 meetings for free to see if you like it before you have to join. And then after that, it's free for as many and all that you want to. So yeah. So it's 12 o'clock now by my clock on my computer, so I'm going to formally close the meeting and say thank you very much everybody for coming. I've actually really enjoyed that because I get to talk about some techno stuff which I always geekily enjoy, and I hope that I didn't give you any jargon that wasn't explained, because it can be very easy to get all jargony with these types of subjects. And I'm here if on my email, claire@spinmyplates.com. So if you get stuck or you have a question, please do feel free to email me, and as soon as I can, I will answer if I know the answer. If not, I'll find out for you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Bye, 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 bye.
Bye, everyone.
Bye. Bye. I'm just going to save my chat before I go, so it won't close just yet.
Okay. It was good to see you all. Bye.
Bye.
Bye. Janet, stay on because we're going to...
Yeah, I know. Yeah.
How do we leave? Yeah. I can't leave. Kick me. Oh, there you go.
I'm going to throw you out.
See you later. I've got it. Bye.
Bye.
Yay.
That was really, I really enjoyed that. I was trying to write everything down, but
that's why I wanted to share the slides as well, because it's easier.
Easier, yeah.
To come back to. I'm just going to stop the recording as well.